There was a couple of things that Donald Trump addressed this week that were, I don't know, just for show. And then, of course, there was the Muslim ban. We'll talk about that in a bit. But let's just start briefly about this 2-for-1 regulation executive order that he promulgated, which to me just sounds like a fairly empty pitch. But then I also want to talk about that piece you wrote about the big threat that Donald Trump is ignoring. Let's start first with that executive order proclamation, where supposedly we've got to get rid of 2 regulations for every new one, which has to be, just on its face, one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard offered in American politics.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. First of all, there's this sort of metaphysical question of what is a regulation, right? I mean, what is one regulation and what is 2 regulations? You can have a regulation that covers 30 different facets of a particular issue area, and you can have a regulation that covers a small piece of an issue area. It's just the idea that regulations are standalone units like blocks, and you can put one in and take 2 away is kind of silly. But if you read the actual executive order, it doesn't say that you have to remove 2 regulations for every one that you put forward. It says you have to identify 2 regulations for removal for every one that you put forward. And the real issue here, and we've seen this repeatedly, this is a part of the Republican playbook, it's just to make it harder to issue a regulation. So we have these various procedures. You have to do public comment. You have to respond to every public comment. You have to comply with other certain things in the statute. In order to get a regulation done, you have to send it to the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. You have to get it approved. There's a million pieces of red tape with getting a regulation finalized, and this just adds some more. And so the chilling effect that is attempting to be created with this executive order is just to make it nearly impossible to promulgate a rule out of any regulatory agency. And of course, you know, what Donald Trump has said is that if you come to me with a regulation, he even said this on the day that he signed the order, if you come to me with a regulation, I'm probably not going to allow it, and because it's already been probably offered 17 times before. So the idea that there's going to be 2 regulations taken away for every one that's put in, he's telling you that none are going to be put in, so none are consequently going to be taken away under this process. It's kind of governing by bumper sticker without any kind of force of reality behind it.
It reminded me of following the Affordable Care Act. One of the big things that Republicans were pushing was this notion that no bill should be over 10 pages long.
Right.
Just sort of like a random number of forget about bills that are complicated. Let's just pretend we live in a small village with 35 people. And I mean, just I mean, fortunately, it was largely ignored because of all the other insanity that was going on this past week. But we should also add, I mean, you know, one of the regulations that I should say, one of the only other time regulations came up this week was the idea that Donald Trump, in meeting with pharmaceutical executives, we had known for a long time, he claimed, like, we're going to negotiate to get lower prices because we're such a big buyer. And he basically caved, met with pharmaceutical executives and said, all I'm going to do is lower your taxes and deregulate you. And then I guess the idea is pharmaceutical companies are going to then pass on the savings. Is that the idea?
That's right. And that's a great point. And it just shows that when you get down to it, there are no ideas coming from this president or this administration or this political party other than the typical conservative bromides of tax cuts, regulation, and trickle down. There's really nothing else there. When push comes to shove, they're not going to take on special interests like the pharmaceutical lobby and do things, common sense things like allow a bulk purchaser to negotiate drug prices. That's not part of the agenda. And Trump really, I think that's going to be an important political issue down the road. The fact that it took all of 10 days for him to go from we're going to do competitive bidding to, oh, no, what we're going to really do is cut regulations and cut your taxes. And you see it in the fact that the pharmaceutical stocks after that meeting jumped in price because they know now we're not going to have to sacrifice anything. We're just going to get all the benefits showered upon us, and we're not even going to really have to pass on those savings to the customer.
Oh, I'm sure they will out of the goodness of their heart, David. You're being very cynical.